So what are you seeing now? Okay, now I'm presenting my screen. And now on the screen now I have report writing. Now you're seeing, eh? Okay. Sawa. So today we are talking about report writing and the learning objectives. The learning objectives include you should be able to define the term reports. Another thing you're supposed to do is to explain the role of reports in an organization. The third thing is to identify different types and forms of reports. The fourth objective is to prepare effective reports. The fifth one is to adapt reports to various audiences. And finally, we would like you to learn to present reports using PowerPoint, like what I'm trying to do now. So that's what we'll be doing, or that's what we'll be talking about today. Let's define a report. A report is a statement of account presented in a particular format. A statement of account presented in a particular format. And the main reason why we do reports is so that we can make decisions based on facts or information. So it is written for a specific individual, for a group of individuals. It can be to one person or to many people. And it includes methodology, findings, as well as methodology, findings, as well as recommendations. Methodology, findings, as well as recommendations. And we are now just talking about the definition of a report. It is a presentation of facts about a specific business activity or program. A presentation of facts about a specific business activity or program. Or you can say it is a statement of facts regarding a situation, a statement of facts regarding a situation, a project, or a process. Then you draw conclusions from the facts and make recommendations. So basically, you just have to say it is a formal statement of account presented in a particular format, written for a specific individual, including methodology, findings, and recommendations. So in the notes that I shared on WhatsApp, you'll see I've given a very short statement. I like those ones on WhatsApp because they are brief and to the point. So I hope Douglas sent all of you that. Did you get those?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Yes.
There are certain characteristics of a good report. The first one is precision. So precision is just being accurate. Precision and accuracy are the same thing. And you're supposed to have the correct dates, the correct quantities, the correct days, correct spelling, yeah? It has to be precise. Then the second characteristic is relevance. So only include information that is required. Only include information that is required. When you add information that is not required, then some people might even be tempted to stop reading the report. So only include information that is required. Then the information has got to be timely. When we're talking about relevance, we are also talking about timeliness. Information has got to be timely. So don't give information, like for example, after you have reported in Kabete, before you report, you should have the information of what is required on entry. So you can't get a report after the fact. Now you've got to Kabete, you find out you left 1, 2, 3 documents and you have to go back. So the relevance, the information needs to be relevant, well timed. Then consider your audience. Consider your audience. So when you have laymen, you can't use technical terms. So when you have laymen, you have to use language that all people understand. When you have a technical audience, then you can use technical terms. Then the fourth one is objectivity. Objectivity. So your recommendations must be free of bias. Your recommendations must be free of bias. The fifth one is simplicity. Use simple language. Don't use bombastic terms. Use simple language so people will not be bored as they are reading your report. Any questions about the characteristics of a good report? They are very similar to the characteristics of communication, yeah? Brevity. Brevity, be brief. Avoid unnecessary repetition. So be brief and to the point. Don't beat about the bush. Be direct. Then under accuracy, we've talked about correct grammar and correct spelling. Correct grammar and correct spelling. So for those who have just joined us, we've defined a report. We've defined a report, and it is a systematic presentation of information presented to one or a group of people. It is in a particular format, and it's mainly used for decision making. It's mainly used for decision making. Then let's go to purpose of reports. Purpose of reports. It's not on what I'm presenting, so pay attention. Purpose of reports. The first one is to provide an account of something witnessed or investigated. To provide an account of something witnessed or investigated. The second one is to inform management about work in progress, to inform management about work in progress. The third one, to recommend improvements, to recommend improvements. The fourth one is to meet statutory requirements, to meet statutory requirements. The fifth one is to act as an aid in decision making, to act as an aid in decision making. And finally, to obtain funding. So thank you for those who have just joined us. I'll start from the top. We defined reports. A report is a form of systematic presentation of information relating to a business activity. It is a basic management tool used for decision making. A report is a form of systematic presentation of information relating to a business activity. It is a basic management tool used for decision making. Then the purpose of writing reports, it's not in what I am sharing now, so you need to pay attention. The purpose of writing reports, the first one is to provide an account of something witnessed or investigated, to provide an account of something witnessed or investigated. The second one, to inform management about work in progress, to inform management about work in progress. The third one, to recommend improvement, to recommend improvement. The fourth one, to meet legal or statutory requirements, to meet legal or statutory requirements. The fifth one, to act as an aid in decision making. The fifth one, to act as an aid in decision making. And the sixth one is to obtain funding. Then I want to repeat the characteristics. The characteristics of a good report. The characteristics of a good report. The first one is accuracy. So the dates need to be correct. If you're giving quantities, they need also to be correct. Numbers, figures, they need to be correct, especially in cases of something like a budget. Then relevance. So the report needs to be well timed and give only the information that is supposed to be or that is required. Again, don't give incomplete information. Give all the information that is required. Then consider the reader. Consider the reader. So if you're dealing with laymen, do not use technical terms. If you're dealing with technical experts, then you can use their technical language. But if you're dealing with laymen, then use simple, clear language. Then objectivity of recommendations. Your recommendations should not be biased. Your recommendations should not be biased. Then clarity, first of all, be clear in your arrangement. Have a title, then have subtitles. That is one aspect of clarity. Another aspect of clarity is simplicity of language. So use simple language. Then divide the report into short paragraphs and use subheadings. And as far as possible, be brief and to the point. Don't beat about the bush. Be brief and to the point. Then your grammar and your spelling needs to be accurate, needs to be on point. Have you got questions so far about definition of reports or characteristics of reports or the purpose? Questions? Any questions? Naum Kennedy, any questions?
No question, madam.
Okay, so we can move to types of reports. So the first type I want to talk about is the oral report. So the oral report is simple and easy to present, like what I'm doing now, yeah? Or if I had given you assignments in groups and said, choose a group leader to present. That's like an oral report. So you use face-to-face communication, and it is chosen because of either emergency, expediency of speed, because the written one is time consuming. So the oral report, if it's an emergency, you're pressed for time, then you go for the oral report. And it is for situations where immediate action needs to be taken. So you don't want to write a memo, then it is received in the other side, then that's when they reply and do something. So an oral report is very fast. Let me give an example. Say, for example, you report to school and we find that we have allocated you a room that is smaller than the number that is required to sit inside. The class rep would just simply quickly come and report to the HOD. Another room would be sought quickly and you would be informed to move to the next room. So that one is not taking days. It takes a matter of minutes and the whole thing is done. So that is oral report. Most of them, the situations are informal. So those are informal reports also. Then you have routine reports. These are reports that are given on a regular basis at regular intervals. So let me give an example. Your attendance, a report needs to be generated at the end of every week. So that's a weekly report. Your academic performance, a report needs to be generated at the end of every term. So that's like a quarterly report. So those are routine reports. Then you guys are your IT people. So let me give an example of maintenance report. So if you're a network administrator, I'm sure you have to check your computers, your machines. Check them that the updates are being done, that the printers are working well, if buttons are missing on the keyboard. So there's a maintenance report, especially if you're dealing with machines and plants. You always have to have a maintenance report. There are things you do daily, then there are things you do weekly, then there are things you do quarterly. And sometimes if that machine is out of date, you have to change and total overhaul of the machine. So people who deal with cars and other things, you understand what I'm talking about. So that is the routine report. Then we have special reports. So they are written in response to requests for specific information. So say, for example, there's been a drop in sales in a certain establishment. Or let me give an example of Kabete. If there's sudden unrest within the students, that is not a regular occurrence. You may need to investigate that incident and write a report giving the details. When did this incident occur? Why did it occur? How can another incident be prevented? Another occasion can be a graduation or a fundraiser. Then for that, you can organize a committee, and at the end of the event, that committee needs to write a report. Then there are formal reports. I'd like to talk about the formal report. So those are the ones that are written by a committee after investigations are concluded, maybe a fire or drop in sales. So those are formal reports. And they are prepared in a prescribed format. They are prepared in a prescribed format and presented according to prescribed procedure. They are prepared in a prescribed format and presented according to a prescribed procedure. So, for example, the treasurer's report during an AGM, that is a formal report. It is required by law and it is filed at the registrar of companies. Do you have questions about the types of reports? Questions about the different types of reports? So if you don't have questions about the different types of reports, let's go to the parts, the components. What are the parts of a report? The first one is the title. The title. So you have the name of the company, and I've given an example. Report on extrajudicial killings in Kenya between August 2010 to date. If it was the Ndumunda land report, you can say report on land allocations in Kenya between 1963 to date, yeah? So that is the title. Then we have terms of reference. Terms of reference. So the terms of reference, they give reasons why the report is being the report is being written. So what was requested? When were the people who are writing the report asked to do it? And if there are deadlines to be met. So to report on extrajudicial killing as requested by the President of Kenya on January 2010 to date. Unaona? So to report on extrajudicial killings are requested by the President of the Republic of Kenya in January 2010 to date. Then the procedure. The procedure, you have to describe the methods you use to collect information. There are several methods. You have observation, you have interviews, and you have questionnaires. You have observation, you have interviews, and you have questionnaires. Now, when do you go for observation? Observation is a very time-consuming matter. Also, you don't go for observation if you need to distance yourself from the subject that you are studying. So observation will compromise your objectivity. Again, you go for observation if your subjects are few. So they are maybe within a room or within a community, a small community. That's when you go for observation. Now, don't go for observation if, first of all, you need to distance yourself from the subject. Don't go for observation if you don't have time, because it is a time-consuming activity, observation. Then another disadvantage of observation, you may lose objectivity when you get attached to your subjects. So your objectivity may be lost. I've just given 3 advantages and disadvantages of observation. You can get more. So maybe towards the end of this, I'll give you an assignment, and one of it will be give advantages and disadvantages of observation as a procedure or as a method of collecting information. Then let's go to interviews. Interviews are normally face-to-face meetings. So interviews are face-to-face meetings, and you pick on interviews. When do you pick on interviews? You pick on interviews when you need feedback or to clarify certain points. You also pick on interviews if your sample size is small, the number of people you need to interview are less, then you can pick on interviews. Now, disadvantages of interview, number 1, you may need to record it. So there's a cost implication. You must have a gadget to record that interview. Then with interview, again, the person is on the spot. So they may not give you honest answers. Maybe they fear victimization. So they may not give you honest answers. Again, interviews are time consuming and there's a cost implication. You must travel to wherever it is the person is. They must have given you an appointment. So they must have time, you must have time. You need to record that interview. So the gadget may be costly, but nowadays, even our phones, we can record on the phone. But a long time ago, you had to have something like a dictaphone, where you are playing the cassette. So also there's a need for skill there. There's need to be skilled in communication, skilled as an interviewer. So if you're not skilled, then that will play to your disadvantage. And let's go to questionnaires. These are the most popular. You can have a questionnaire over the phone, asking questions over the phone, or you can have a printed one. Nowadays, because of COVID, we don't want the printed one. We want the oral one. So these questionnaires, they are good because, number 1, people don't need to give their names, so they can be honest. Then you can cover a very large area. Again, you can mail the questionnaire and then it's mailed back to you. So you can cover a very wide area. So the disadvantage is that the return rate may be low. And then questionnaires, sometimes they are closed. So you don't get to collect candid views, or you don't get to collect a lot of information. You give options. You give options and people are limited to those options. Unlike interviews, where you can have a candid discussion and come out of the limits that you had set and find out more information. Any questions about methodology that you use? Questions about methodology that you use? So observation,
Excuse me, madam.
Yes.
Circumstances under which a questionnaire may be used to collect information.
Yes. I've told you when you have a very large area to cover, If you want to cover distance, you can mail the questionnaires. If you want honest answers, because they don't have to write their name, then you use the questionnaire. Because you'll be given honest answers. Nobody is afraid of the repercussions of answering this or that, yeah? So that is when you pick the questionnaire. Again, with questionnaires, you can even hire people to distribute those questionnaires besides mailing. Then you drop and pick after a certain amount of time. Again, questionnaires provide a record of the data collection. So with interview, you must record, and with observation, you must take pictures. Okay. And observation circumstances where you use observation, for example, you're investigating a fire, investigating a murder. Those ones you go, you take pictures of things as they were, and you collect samples of whatever it is you're talking about. If it is ash, if it is water, you collect those samples. Then you take the pictures, a permanent record of what you saw. So for interview, if the people you're interviewing are fewer, then that's when you pick interview. But questionnaires for many people. Another question about methodology. So if there are no questions, just know what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages. When do I pick this? When do I pick the other one? Those are the questions that come when it comes to this. Then you'll be asked to write a report. So I've sent you a sample report. I hope you also got it. So then after the procedure, after the methodology, you discuss your findings. So if under interviews you found out that many members are not, for example, I asked you people, why aren't you attending online classes? Then some say, I don't have bundles. Another one says, my phone is about to go off. So I have to say, when I was interviewing, I found out that there's lack of bundles. Then you explain 20% of the subjects that were interviewed said that they were unable to raise the funds for bundles. Then 40% of the subjects that were interviewed explained that their gadgets usually run out of power after 1 hour, yet the lesson is supposed to run for 2 hours. Things like that. So under findings, you can also have subheadings to clearly demonstrate or to give an overview, a quick overview. These findings can also be presented as charts, graphs, yeah? But even when you give a chart or a graph, you are also supposed to explain just a short paragraph what that graph is saying. So like I've said, 20% were unable to raise bundle, 40% do not have the necessary gadgets. 1 or 2% didn't have electricity. All those things matter. You can also say someone doesn't have technical know-how. For example, you are the ones who helped me to present. So all this time I've been teaching online, I've just been talking to people, then sending the notes. So now today, I've been able to present thanks to the first 2 people who joined the meeting. So you can say lack of skills is hampering people again. Unstable internet is another factor. Then, like for me yesterday, I had to stop the class and attend to an administrative matter. So all those findings, you list them. And here on my presentation, you see I've said see example below. So I've given a sample and you're going to see as we are going on, but I've also sent it. It was part of the WhatsApp that I sent to the class representatives. So we have talked about the title of the report, the terms of reference, the procedure, and the finding. After your findings, you must draw a conclusion. Never give recommendations before you draw a conclusion. So I can say online classes are not 100% effective because 70% of the participants are unable to join because of the above reasons, bundles, gadgets, all those things. Yeah. So online classes are only 30% effective. That is my conclusion. Then when I go to recommendations, that's when I use my findings. If 20% of the students are the only ones able to raise bundles, what can we do? We can say the school should register for education bundles. Again, you can recommend that they can partner with either Safaricom or another company to provide gadgets for the students. So when you're admitted, you are admitted and you have to report with either a laptop that has been financed by HELP and HP or something like that. So for the whole time you're a student in Kabete, you'll be paying for that laptop, but you'll be using it even for other things, the business plan, email, research, and other businesses. You can even have a website there selling shoes to pay for the laptop. But you use your recommendation should be based on the finding. So we've talked about the bundles and gadgets. Then let's go to another heading, maybe unstable internet. The school should partner with Safaricom 5G or 4G, yeah? Something like that. The provider. So you should look into the modalities of having a better provider, one that will provide better internet, or maybe our broadband is small, yeah, so perhaps they have to pay for more bandwidth, yeah, things like that. So those recommendations, they should correspond with your finding. If number one was bundles, the recommendation about bundles should be number one again. If number two was gadgets, the recommendations about gadgets should be number two, and things like that. Maybe physical classes, you could say the physical classes should be more than 2 weeks, could be 4 weeks or something like that, so that we are able to cover the syllabus more, things like that. Yeah. Then closing, you have to say who compiled that report and give the date. So look at my sample. The sample said Langland Manufacturing Company. That is the organization that commissioned this report. And the title is Report on Possible Support for Staff Football Team. Then terms of reference, to report on the possibility of the company supporting the staff football team to play in the local league as requested by Rashid Hassan, office manager, on 8th of August 2020. Then procedure, 25 members of staff and 10 football players were interviewed to ask for their opinion. Here, I want you to look at the numbers, 25 members of staff and 10 football players. If you had 250 members, you would go for questionnaire, because those are too many and the interview would take you very, very long. Yeah. Then I want to comment on another methodology. You could look at other records that are already existing. Those are secondary sources of data. So you could say you looked at the performance of the football players and found that the football players were more productive than the ones who were not playing football. And you can still say that it makes economic sense to sponsor the football team, because it will increase the productivity of the staff. So that is just secondary data, the data that is already existing. Then positive feedback and problems, those two fall under findings. Those two fall under findings. So look at finding number 1. There is a lot of general support for the football team. And the first recommendation, it is recommended that support be given to a company-sponsored football team. Then the second one, the players would like the company to supply football strips for the team. Now, the second recommendation could be the company should supply football strips for the team. Ama, the company should identify a supplier to supply football strips. I think that is football, the merchandise, what you wear, the shoes, the vest, the shorts, yeah, maybe a tracksuit, yeah. Then the third recommendation is the team would not expect the company to be involved in the running of the football team. So the recommendation is a management team appointed by the company should be involved in the running of the football team. You bring it under recommendations. Then there are problems, is still under findings. Then some female staff felt that supporting a men-only team is unfair to women. You could recommend that a second team just for women be formed, yeah, and supported equally. So you can look at what we have written and then make recommendation. That's the other assignment I want to give. Look at that sample. Already I see certain things that I would have changed. For example, recommendations. Ameweka recommendations hapo kwa positive feedback, yeah? So there was a lot of general support for the team, and then the team would expect the company to be involved in the running. A committee should come under recommendations. So I want you people to attempt that. Then we'll talk about it before we go to the next topic. But that next topic will be in January. Tomorrow we are closing for the holidays. Friday we are closing for the holidays until the 4th of January. And then again, today's link was just for today because we missed yesterday's class. The link for yesterday is the same one, yeah? Always on Wednesday at 1 to 3 we have a class.
So, madam, I had a question.
Yes, Douglas?
Like when you're writing a report,
Yes.
how many words should you count the words? How many words should be in that report? And
No.
then should you consider words? And then in a report,
Mm-hmm.
you say there are so many format styles.
Yes.
Like when I've seen some questions,
Yes.
they don't give you a specific style to follow probably when writing a report.
In the WhatsApp notes, I sent you the schematic. Did you see the schematic format? Regardless of whichever format you have been asked, if you give or if you write a schematic report, you are not going to fail. So the notes that I sent you on WhatsApp, I have written schematic format where you have the title, the terms of reference, the procedure, the findings, the conclusion, and recommendation. And the sample that I am talking about now, this one that we are looking at, that one is in the schematic format. So however you're asked to write, whichever form of report you're asked, if you go to the default is schematic, you know, understand default because you people are to a computer. So if you default to schematic, you're not going to fail because you'll have all the parts. But let me talk about another format, the memo. You know how a memo is written? You have a title, memorandum, then to, from, date, and then the subject. Now, hapo kwa subject, that's where the title of your report comes. Then unakuja kama sasa schematic. Title, the terms of reference, procedure, findings, conclusion, recommendations. Another one is the one that is written like a letter. You know how the letter is, you have the letterhead, then you have the date, then you have the salutation, and then you have the subject. After that, unakuja kwa terms of reference, procedure, finding, conclusion, recommendation. But when in doubt, go to the default. Nimepeana schematic format. You will be fine. Hautaanguka hiyo swali. Any other question?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah, if you are, for example, you are writing a report
Yes.
and then you just conclude under findings, but you have not mentioned or you have not written conclusion, then you just give your conclusion. So you just, after findings, you just conclude instead of concluding under the conclusion sub heading.
Mm-hmm.
So can you be penalized for that? Or
Yes, you'll be penalized because it affects your clarity. The use of subheadings makes your report very beautiful, yeah? So always have title, then terms of reference, then procedure, then findings, then conclusion, then recommendations. Always use those subheadings. So under those subheadings, that's when you can now list your points. It makes your report look very presentable. Any other question?
List 3 instances when oral
Yes?
may be preferred.
Repeat?
List 3
Maybe?
instances
Mm.
when oral reports may be preferred.
Oral reports, you maybe hukuingia kama nasema, oral reports are preferred in cases of emergency. And also when it is informal, it's an informal report. Then you can have an oral report. Exit interviews, we'll talk about them in another topic. When someone is leaving a job, then they do an exit interview. When they are leaving, yeah? There, you want to just establish, this is Musembi Musioka's question, what are exit interviews? So when someone is leaving a job, you want to establish why they are leaving, and if there are good things you're doing in the organization, and then if there are areas of improvement. So then you give them an exit interview. It is just to show them that you are releasing them in good faith. It's to show them that you're releasing them in good faith. And also you're asking them for feedback. What are they doing right? What are you doing right in the organization? And what can you do to improve? Those are exit interviews. We'll talk about them later. So, okay, Musembi, nimeona, karibu. Ebi, have I answered your question? When it's an emergency, when you need immediate feedback, when there's need for clarifications, then you go for the oral report because it's a face-to-face meeting. Now, a disadvantage of that is that there's no record unless you're recording that report as it's being presented. So if you need a written record and if you have time, then go for the written report. Any other questions? Any other questions? Let's go to the steps in preparing a report. Steps in preparing a report. So there are basic principles. A report must have a title that indicates the general contents of the report. A report must have a title that indicates the general contents of the report. The second one, it should be addressed to the person or the people for whom it is intended. It should be addressed to the person or the people for whom it is intended. The third one, the terms of reference or the scope of the report should be stated. So that is what makes your report relevant. It defines your boundaries. It makes your report relevant by defining the boundaries beyond which you are not going to go. Then always have headings. So remember, I've told you, don't ignore the subheadings, terms of reference, procedure or methodology, then findings, conclusion, and recommendations. Then the body of the report should contain the nature of investigations carried out, any limiting factors will come under terms of reference. Nature of investigations carried out will come under methodology. Then a statement of the sources of information, that one is an appendix. The way you usually write references in a business plan or any other place. So it's not part of what I'd given. You can have an appendix in addition to this page that I had shown as a sample, and that's where you list your references. Then conclusions should be indicated. So for example, you're investigating a fire, you must say the cause of the fire was accidental because the wiring got short-circuited, or the cause of the fire was intentional. It was set using petrol and a matchstick. And maybe you'll show the jerrycan of petrol still there. Okay, so you have to come to a conclusion. Then make recommendations based on your findings. Here again, the report should be dated, signed, and the author's name included. The report should be dated, signed, and the author's name included. If you have charts, you can put them after the list of references. Remember, I said you can have an additional list showing your sources of information. You can also have Appendix 2, the graphs and charts, and the pictures. Like I've said, I've talked about a jerrycan of oil that was found at the site of fire. That picture is an appendix. It comes after the sources of information or the references. If it's a very long report, have an executive summary and a table of contents. Then I'm now talking about the format. I've already told Douglas, but I'll repeat. You have the letter format. So remember how a letter looks. You have the letterhead, then you have the date, then you have the salutation, yeah? The inside address, the outside, the letterhead, the inside address, alafu unakuja kwa salutation. And then the body, terms of reference, procedure, finding, conclusion, and recommendation. Then a memo, remember I'd said, unasema memo, then to, from, then the subject, and the terms of reference. And the final one is the schematic format. So the terms of reference, procedure, conclusion, recommendations. Nataka copy these ones that I've highlighted, please. Then you tell me once you have finished. Copy those ones. You have been requested to write a report on the status of equipment in your organization. Outline 2 details that you'd include in this report. The second question, state 3 functions of business reports in an organization. We talked about that, decision making, obtain funding. What else did I say? To recommend improvements, to inform management about work in progress, to provide an account of something witnessed or investigated, to meet legal requirements. Highlight 3 qualities of a good questionnaire. Highlight 3 qualities of a good questionnaire. The questionnaire should be organized well. Come from general to more specific questions. Then the questions should be closed. Give people options. Say yes, no, strongly agree, to disagree, yeah? Undecided. Then have just 1 or 2 open ones where they give their own information. Then the hostel block of Utumishi Technical Institute was recently destroyed by fire. You've been requested to investigate the matter. After having investigated, write a report and make recommendations. So attempt those questions. You can do them in groups or you can do them individually. Ukinitumia nitamark. Here is my answer. You may look at my answer. I don't know if you have been able to look. And this is not the law. You can add your own answers. It's not cast in stone. Notice the way you have to say report compiled by, signature, name, designation, yeah? And date. Sijui kwa nini sijaweka date huko. It's part of the, you have to say the date. You've got the questions and answers? Or you can.
Madam, why don't you,
Yes?
why don't you look at the comment section? I've written something there.
Oh, okay. You don't send edited notes of communication skills, please. I've been sending. Yeah, I usually send them. I like to send them ahead. Like yesterday, I'd sent. Then the staff, the class was interrupted. Any other questions? I hope you are able to copy all the questions and answers. So if that is the end, and you've got the questions, that is the end of our classes for now. We'll continue after the 4th of January. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Okay, sawa. Yeah, class rep Mukue Chonjo. I'm making videos of the lessons. There are some topics that I will do over Christmas. Na mutajisomea tu polepole wenyewe, yeah? Otherwise,
Bye, Maria.
bye.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, ciao.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you.